What a better time than now to revisit the political compass? I'm growing up, I'm 21. I haven't really done this proper in video form in about 18 months. So let's see how things have switched up over the time of this recording. So basically, we have 6 pages here, and we're just going to address it straight from the top on down. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Now, see, this is a trick question. This is completely, I think it's bull jive, to be honest, okay? Look, just to be contrarian, I'm going to slightly disagree with this because obviously it's just super, super cringe language here. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. No, not really, obviously. Yeah, of course. Now, again, this is another trick question, but I don't want to I don't want to consider this too much. No one chooses their country of birth, so it'd be foolish to be proud of it. No, well, of course not. Like if you're born with a high IQ, good looks, etc., I mean, there's something to be proud of. And you could argue, well, you didn't work for it, which is to say, like, you know what? Actually, who cares? It's all about perception at the end of the day. And so, if you got lucky, like me, and you were born in America, then you ought to be proud of it. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think this is maybe written by a guy who was born in Iceland or someplace irrelevant. And so that's the bottom line. Our race has many superior qualities compared to other races. Well, well, it's tricky for me, obviously, because I'm Mexican, but you would have to argue it. So I think the premise is there a difference between the races? And so therefore, is there a distinction, so to speak? Which, yeah, obviously, because there wouldn't be a differentiation in the races at all if there wasn't a difference that was meaningful in the first place. Duh. And so, by that being said, are there superior qualities to my race? Is the autistic interpretation of the answer, which I would say, I mean, kind of, I mean, Mexicans are kind of the worst of all, like low key, because if you're white, you can do long distance sprinting. If you're black, you can do like short burst acceleration. So okay, now I'm being too autistic about this. I'm gonna just slightly agree with this. I don't have a strong opinion. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah. I mean, again, these are such trick questions. Like now that I'm older, these are so stupid. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Of course it is. International law is stupid. It's stupid. A lot of laws are stupid. My voice cracked. That's like how stupid they are. I had my Tucker Carlson voice crack. There is now a whirring fusion of information and entertainment. That's stupid. No, that's like more like white people kind of like, "Oh my god, I'm so scared of TikTok." So people are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I guess the caricature of this point would be the movie Elysium with Matt Damon from 2011. I don't really agree with that premise. Obviously, I think nationality just in general matters more to people than does class. I don't think you can even argue that. So I strongly disagree. That's really stupid, actually. My basic point is like obviously countries are founded on ethnic groups, even if not just race. Obviously, like there's different ethnic white people, but they form around those parameters, and not class. You don't have a country where it's like just rich people. The closest thing you've got to it is Luxembourg, and Luxembourg actually has a track record of a legitimate rule, and so it's not even a class thing at that point. So no, you're wrong. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling the unemployment. That's actually completely true. Now, this might seem asinine, like maybe, people not working is worse than the inflation being different, but no, actually, the inflation could be a way bigger issue than unemployment. I would look to Argentina in the 19, I think, 20s, or Uruguay, and you would see what I'm talking about. Yes, the inflation is a way bigger deal than the unemployment past a certain point. Yeah. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I disagree with the premise. Obviously, a corporation, if they ruin the environment to a certain point, then they wouldn't be able to profit. And so there is a mechanism for them to actually preserve the environment. Obviously, there's certain cases where they might shortcut things because they're thinking about a short-term scenario. But in principle, yes, at the long term, they would have to salvage trees. Like, for example, if you're chopping trees in the lumber industry and you want to make profits 100 years from now, you're going to have to replant the trees you chop down. This is just common sense. And so the liberal disposition to say you need an EPA is asinine. And that's like one of the worst things Nixon did, because Nixon was a great president otherwise. From each according to his ability, is each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. This is a Marx quote or something. Of course not. This is stupid as hell. Okay. Um, you know, do people require what they need and only that? No, of course not. There is a possibility for more. It's like GTA Online, low key. It's like, okay, look, I want the yacht. You want things that are not, needs, but they're wants, and that's fine. And that's a motivation for people to work harder. If it came down to like the bare necessities, no one would work more than 40 hours in a lot of cases because they'd already have what they need. It's a boring life to have this premise be actually real. The freer the people, the freer the market, the freer the people. I agree. Obviously, there's the big case of China where that isn't necessarily true, but that's still not even the case because obviously the people in China now are freer than they were 50 years ago prior to the admittance into the WHO or whatever it was called, the World Trade Organization. And so, yeah, obviously, if you have freer markets, the freer the people, not always, but yeah, it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled in a branded consumer product. Horrible take, obviously a liberal one. And no, if things can be sold for cheaper and they're very essential to human life, that's fine. That's fine. If they could even sell air and it were somehow cheaper, I don't give a fuck. Who cares? Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. This is straight up communism. Of course not. Wait, hold on. Oh, wait, let me make sure I'm not making a mistake here. No, land rights are super important. You ought to be able to sell land. That's ridiculous. Land shouldn't be a commodity. Okay, cool. Is it regrettable? It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I agree with this. This is basically a jab at the Wolf of Wall Street people. Obviously, I think stocks in a major way are just not ethical, but also just like BS. It's a lot of speculatory investment, and I think that's really stupid. I think there's really not a lot of backing minus hype for a lot of billions of dollars that are moving down the market every single second. And so it's just a ridiculous thing that even exists. So no, like for example, does the stock market, which is pretty high right now, does that represent how good middle America is doing? The answer is obviously not. Because again, speculatory investment is not really indicative of personal production, which is what money ought to be used for anyhow. So protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I would strongly agree with this. This is a no-brainer. The only social responsibility of a company is to deliver a profit to the shareholders. Yes, the rich are too highly taxed. I strongly agree with this. Again, a lot of poor people would seethe, but if you have millionaire relatives and stuff like this, you would notice that they pay way too much. And I mean, it's literally true. Like the more you would be around rich people, you'd be more empathetic, if not completely sympathetic. And that's inarguable. So the rich are too highly taxed, legit. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Yes, 100%. 100%. Because think about it. If you gave everybody the equal treatment, then eventually that would cut into everybody's healthcare, low key. Think of Britain, where they have to prop up this BS NHS without raising taxes. And so what they'll do is they'll stagnate the economy in other ways, cause inflation through government spending, compensating for the lack of tax revenues, or they'll import the third world to become the nurses and the shitty replacement doctors for the government healthcare they provide to everybody because, we need to save people money and stuff. It's just really stupid. It doesn't work. Anyway, government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. No, I mean, not really. Again, this is like an overreach. And again, how stupid do you have to be misled? Because think about it, if a business really misleads that many people, then people are going to say, oh my God, this is a grift. And therefore they're going to de-invest. So I don't know how the hell this would even matter. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. The premise in and of itself is wrong here, okay? Obviously, a genuine free market means that there wouldn't be restrictions. So, like, what the hell? I mean, the phrasing of this is terrible. Predator multinationals, well, I'm against that. But what does predator multinationals even mean in that case? Like, Samsung might buy an American phone company, and what's the issue? That some of the tax revenue would go to Asia versus America? Well, then why is that the case? We have a better country than everybody else, so then why are they outcompeting us? Cheaper labor? Okay, well, then whose fault is that? We have higher living standards. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the Americans' fault low key because we have a higher living standard, which provides for labor union laws and all this other stuff, which makes it economically not feasible to really have a competitive market when it comes to cars and the automobile industry and in the case of tablets and phones in a lot of cases. So when you really look at it at the brass tacks, this is not really a big issue. But anyway, abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I agree, basically, because yeah, duh. Because the premise would be, is abortion a kill or a murder of a child? In which case, I would agree it is. So then why would it? Yeah, I mean, all authority should be questioned. Yes. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. No. That's just stupid. That, again, that doesn't, like, it literally doesn't work that way. I mean, when you really examine the most representative countries or warlord tribes for this sort of philosophy, you'd probably be looking at Somalia and those like African videos where they kill each other's opponents and make them dig a ditch and then light them on fire. That's that sort of thing. It just doesn't work. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Well, no, because if they were so commercially viable, then they wouldn't even need to be approached by the government for funding in the first place. And so the premise in and of itself is ridiculous. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Strongly disagree. These people need to be in school. And you might say, oh, well, a parent has the right not to put their kid in education. No, they do not have the right. I think that's stupid. And by that, I mean, like, I haven't thought it through, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, generally, force them all to go to school. Yes. Now, could they have homeschooling? Yes. But I'm just saying, like, they need to be educated somehow. You can't just say, like, oh, well, I'm going to have my kid illiterate. No, screw that. Of course not. It's ridiculous. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. I disagree with the premise. So this is like a miscegenation question, which I think is wrong. Obviously, like this whole notion of having like racial differences is something that is like primal, but it's also not ideal. Okay, so like in a Christian doctrine, you shouldn't have restrictions against like browns against whites, or even a heuristic in that way. Like for example, there should be nothing stopping from black people commingling with whites. Obviously, there's off-putting things to it in a primal sense. Clearly, historically, people have been averse to it. But like when you really boil down to the ethics of it, there's really nothing wrong with it. And so an anti-miscegenation sort of thing like this is stupid. So I strongly disagree with it, actually. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of like, oh my God, the white girl's going to date the black guy. That can oftentimes be awkward, but I'm just saying like, there's nothing wrong with it in principle. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Yeah, basically. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I also agree with this. Well, it's actually strongly agree. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. I agree. There is a niche scenario where obviously you want to kind of like have marijuana possession be an added charge to somebody who's being faced a docket of different other stuff for the state to basically have more leverage to have a worse plea deal for the defendant. So, for example, let's say you have a career criminal who's selling hard drugs plus happen to have weed and an illegal gun. The weed charge would just add more leverage to the state to prosecute a guy who otherwise is already a scumbag. And so the weed is kind of a pretext to that. And so there's a practical utility to it. That being said, obviously, it's not the ethical way to do it legally. And so, yeah, owning weed in and of itself ought not be a criminal offense, in my opinion. The prime function of school should to be equipping the future generation to find jobs. Yes, obviously. People with serious inheritable diseases should not be allowed to reproduce. I think that's a huge overreach of government. Obviously, people with those sort of things should not reproduce. But I'm pretty sure their disability should stop them well enough, and the government should not put their foot in that door. So anyway, the most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I agree, I guess. I haven't thought that through. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. That is asinine, obviously. You look at Sentinel Island. You look at the sort of like feces that runs down the Ganges River. I mean, there's things that people need to acknowledge as like, okay, this is gross. And otherwise, let's say Liechtenstein is a pretty nice society, if that even counts. So, I mean, you can't just say, oh, it's different. That's just really stupid. That's like saying, there's no such thing as handsome and ugly. It's only different, which is a complete bogus non sequitur anyway. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Obviously, yes. When you were troubled, it's better to not think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I mean, this is a tough one. I guess disagree slightly. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated with their new country. I somewhat disagree with this. Obviously, if you have a first generation immigrant from England and they came here at the age of 6 months old, obviously they can be completely integrated into American society. Or you take a Canadian immigrant. I mean, it's just a stupid. I just don't agree with that in principle. Obviously, like 80% of first generation immigrants would not be fully integrated because they would probably have accents or they're ethnic or some stuff like that. In which case, then yeah, but I think in principle, I am right here. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for us. Basically, yeah, because otherwise, because, okay, so basically, this is the premise would be that people make the right decisions vaguely because if they're still alive, then they're doing something right. In which case, if they keep corporations alive, then there's some sort of cycle here that is mutually beneficial. And so, therefore, there's a common thread there, logically, which is true. Obviously, corporations are not always good. A lot of them promote vices, junk food, whatever have you. Okay, that's true. But in the holistic sense, corporations are good because if they weren't, then people wouldn't be using them, in which case, then they would cease to exist. So that's my logic. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content should receive public funding. I basically agree with this. And plus, most like PBS and all that is like slightly liberal anyway. And so also NPR sucks. Okay. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I completely agree with that. There's no need to elaborate more. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Well, technically that is true. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. I slightly disagree with that. Obviously, you don't really need to worry, but it's still disconcerting. Like, for example, let's say my conduct is completely fine, but if I knew that people were watching me, that would just creep me out. And then, so that's like the visceral answer to it. And then the other thing would be obviously the constitutionality. But okay, the death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I completely agree with that. It is in a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and the people below to be commanded. I agree. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered all art at all. I agree. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. I disagree. Obviously, no, of course not. No, rehabilitation is more important. Punishment. I mean, that's like, yeah. I don't know. It's a difficult thing to parse through. I would say that punishment is only important insofar as a deterrent, but the deterrent of punishment is actually not even that big of a deal statistically, from my understanding. Rehabilitation, I think, is pretty vital, especially when the people that are in jail are young. If it's a first time offense, I mean, people are already, if you look at any sort of sentencing guideline, it takes into consideration all of these. So, yeah, of course, I think rehab is really important. And like I said, if anybody wants to spurg out in the comments, just know that obviously if you kill people, then the punishment would matter more than rehab at that point. But, if you're shoplifting or you're, like DUI or something, then rehab is way better than punishment. And I think most people could agree to that. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Yeah, duh. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Technically, yes, because they're the capital behind any sort of art taking off anyway. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Generally, yes, of course. Almost all politicians promote or promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science and no, I don't believe in that. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Yes, that's true. Astrology accurately explains many things. Of course not. So that's the wine mom question. You cannot be moral without being religious. No, this is like a really ticky tacky stupid thing people get into. Like, oh, if you're an atheist, you can't be moral. Yeah, of course. I mean, generally, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, yeah, duh. Of course you can. Then you could say, well, what's the backing? Oh, does God tell you to be more? Like, viscerally, who cares? At that point, who cares? It's just to say you have a vague idea of like selflessness and a sense of community. And religion obviously kind of backs it matter of factually insofar as something that cannot be proven is believed in. That being said, obviously, as a Christian, I think that morality is objective, but also I could see like in a parlance, in a colloquial sense, that yes, somebody can be moral and upstanding while also not believing in God because they can be selfless, they can be charitable, and that all is a good thing. And so it's kind of the sort of debate is so stupid to me. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. No. Now, I don't know, I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but honestly, do charities really even do anything? You hear all the time, YouTuber, celebrity donates whatever to whatever, but do you materially see anything at all? And the reason why I point that out is because they have every reason to publicize like, oh, we cured cancer for X and Y people. I don't see these articles probably because they don't really do anything. And so it just doesn't matter. Social Security, obviously, it's an awkward thing to juxtapose, let's say, St. Jude's Hospital to Social Security. But the point being is that there's material benefits to the government programs, whereas the charities are probably inefficient, if I had to guess. Now, obviously, like my church will donate stuff, and like I viscerally understand that. But like at the big level where you're like, oh, PewDiePie donated to the ACL or whatever, that is like, what happens there? A lot of people don't know. And again, like I would beg the question, okay, what do they do? I don't know. So that's why I slightly disagree. Some people are naturally unlucky. I don't agree with that premise at all. No, that's just stupid. It's like, oh, I'm homeless. I was unlucky. Like, yeah, sure, I did fentanyl and sure, I like cheated on my wife. And actually, yeah, I did quit my job, but no, you're not unlucky. Obviously, some people you're born like obviously, if you're a dwarf or you're hideous, you were born and Freddy Krueger's your baby daddy or something. Like the point being is that obviously you are given a different deck of cards, but the point being is like you get to play them at least, unless you're disabled, in which case then you don't even have any culpability anyway, so you can chill out. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. I mean, I agree with it. Obviously, that'd be good, but at the same time, it's not really their prerogative. It's not really the school's place. And honestly, if schools were given religious like mandate, what the hell would that devolve into? Like, first, it might be like a decent non-denominational Christian doctrine, and then it would probably boil down to like some Episcopalian gay stuff really quickly. And so, no. Okay, now, final page here. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral, obviously. Yeah, I mean, what's the argument here? It's usually immoral. Not to say it's the biggest deal, but it is immoral, obviously. Mm, it's kind of like drinking and driving. Like, as long as you don't kill anyone, is there really a harm? But also, like, if you're chancing it, that's a very dangerous thing. And so that's basically the same thing here. A same sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. I disagree with that, of course. Why the hell should they have kids? Of course not. That's a horrible idea. It's just such a stupid point. It's like saying a guy on trial for murder, should he have the possibility of being a lawyer? No, of course not. That's like, it's so asinine. It's so asinine. Um, Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal to the adult population. Yeah, I see a lot of people, a lot of my peers that are conservatives will say like, oh, obscenity laws, whatever. Truth is that it should be legal, just constitutionally. I don't see what the problem would be. It just should be like, just being honest, it should, just for the same reason that I'm okay with marijuana possession, because even though I don't do it, it's like to say that's just generally what the Constitution would prove to be legitimate. Not putting a value statement on it either way here. And also the spurging on it is so, it just reeks of insecurity, and it's like this consternation. It's like so uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, you cannot watch this. You eat McDonald's. It's like, dude, you're a fucking autist. Shut up. And I am too, but I'm self-aware about it. So that's the answer right there. What goes on in the private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. You know, in high school, I would have disagreed when I really cared. I would have been like, if you're doing gay stuff, then the government should break down your door. And I was exaggerating, but there was some truth to it. And I disagree with it now. Obviously, I thought this was always a libertarian white person point of view, and it still is, but I kind of accede to it now that I'm 21. Reason being is that, like, how the hell can the state even police this anyway? And so to that extent, I don't care. So yeah. Excuse me. Okay. No one can fit. Whoops. Okay. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Uh, I mean, I agree. I don't think you're born gay per se. Obviously not. Yeah, I agree, I guess. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I mean, I agree. Also, it's a lot of things where, clearly there is a whiplash effect and conservatives are overcompensating. Like, oh, we need to cover up. And it's like, okay, well, okay. But generally, yeah, obviously it's gone too far. All right, guys. So for frame of reference, I've done this test for like 5 years probably, and I've gotten right around this area right here. Honestly, I'll just come out the closet. One time I remember in high school when I was like I was being very contrarian back then, like very populist contrarian. I regret it deeply, but I was like somewhere over here in the red quadrant, like ever so slightly. Now, just for the people that don't understand, the bottom left is like the like gay Portland liberal sort of demographic, the Antifa type. The top left is the Stalinist, as you can see, North Korea and China. The bottom right is the libertarian side. So this is like the Ron Paul, the chill people, and then the upper right is like authoritarian, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Pinochet in Chile, as vis-a-vis maybe 40 years ago, perhaps that time. Anyhow, so let's look at this. So I am 4.25 economic right, and I am also authoritarian 2.21. So the demarcation point, in my opinion, is that I'm more economically right wing, but also more socially. I'm basically the same as I was before. So I'm not surprised at all. My positions have nuanced a little bit. Again, I've been conservative my entire life and hasn't changed. So what do you guys think? Comment down below what you thought. And what do you think of the video premise? I thought it was a good idea. So I'll see you all in the next one. Adios.